when I sat with the doctor, he said to me, "You've got irritable bowel syndrome." And that was the first time I'd ever heard of that. It was completely new to me. And he says, "Here's these tablets, come back in a month's time for more." And I was like, well, why do I need to come back for more? Surely they'll do the job. How long will I have to take them for? And he says, for the rest of your life.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. This week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast, join me and my guest, Marc McLean, as he shares his personal journey of overcoming IBS and severe ulcerative colitis through natural solutions. As a health and wellness journalist and author, Marc's own battle with gut disorders led him down an alternative health path in search of answers. After nearly a decade of research and experimentation, Marc finally discovered the root causes of his conditions and successfully reversed his IBS and his ulcerative colitis. Now Marc is dedicated to helping others in similar situations by spreading awareness of natural healing methods for gut health and especially ulcerative colitis. Stay tuned to hear Marc's incredible story and learn how you too can take control of your digestive health. Marc McLean, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lee. I've been binge listening to your podcast this past week. You've had some amazing guests on, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, and yeah, I'm just so blessed that the quality of people that have agreed to come on my show so far, and I'm sure you're going to add to this.
I've done my best.
So Marc, to kick things off, could you share with the audience perhaps your professional background, your history, and what kickstarted your long gut health journey?
Yeah, so I'm a professional journalist. I've worked in the media for the past 22 years now, but I became quite involved in alternative health and learning all about the workings of the body, nutrition and all that, simply because I had to, because I had a gut health collapse almost like overnight from nowhere. Ultimately, I was diagnosed with severe ulcerative colitis, which is a very serious inflammatory bowel disorder. I was passing blood in the toilet like 15 to 20 times a day for months on end, which is obviously quite serious. And I was worried about how bad this could be and exactly what it was. But the journey had actually, that was in 2017, but the journey had actually started a lot earlier than that when, back in 2010, I come back from a holiday, 2-week, all expenses paid holiday. We were having a great laugh, me and the lads at a wedding, drinking, eating whatever we wanted. And when I came back, my gut health was all over the place. Extreme diarrhea and then fluctuating to constipation. It almost seemed to stop working overnight, and it made no sense. So I had in my head that this is just some sort of bug I've picked up in Greece where we were. Went to the doctor expecting him to hand me some sort of medication, some sort of antibiotics, the way it used to always be when you go to the doctor. You get the medication, you get sent on your way, and then things get better in a couple of weeks' time. But things didn't quite go to plan in that appointment that day. So when I sat with the doctor, he said to me, "You've got irritable bowel syndrome." And that was the first time I'd ever heard of that. It was completely new to me. And he says, "Here's these tablets, come back in a month's time for more." And I was like, well, why do I need to come back for more? Surely they'll do the job. How long will I have to take them for? And he says, for the rest of your life. And for me, that just blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, for the rest of my life? I'm a 28-year-old guy. I was a health and fitness freak, just like you. I was obsessed with the gym, lifting weights, looked after my body. I didn't smoke, hardly drank alcohol in general. It just made no sense. So walking out that appointment with him that day, it didn't sit right in my gut. I knew there had to be another way, and I just said to myself, if he's not got the answers, I'm going to have to find them myself. Now, being a journalist, it was basically part of my job to try and research, find the answers, the truth behind what was really going on in situations. In my own situation, I was like, well, the doctor can only dedicate like 10 minutes to you in that appointment. I was like, well, I've got all the time in the world to research this and find out the answers myself. So I decided to go down this alternative health path, trying to find out what had gone wrong with my body. And I intuitively knew that diet would be a big part of this and finding the answer. I just didn't realise how long this journey was going to take. It took me the best part of a decade to see the full picture of all the different elements to what had caused my health problems and the various solutions that I picked up along the way. But with the whole IBS thing, as some of your listeners might know and some might not know, that's essentially just a label when the doctor doesn't know exactly what's going on. It's just a label for a collection of symptoms, and they hand you that label. So for me, it wasn't good enough. I wanted to find out the root causes of what was going on. So long story short, I found some solutions to the IBS thing, and my health was up and down, and I managed to get myself to maybe around 80% I'd say about 80% in terms of feeling good, and I was managing things quite well with all sorts of different biohacking tools, supplements, looking after my body. I got to this certain level of being okay, but then life came and hit me hard in 2017 when the ulcerative colitis then developed, and that was on the back of my dad dying in 2017. My dad had a long struggle with alcoholism. I knew he was on the way out, to be honest. It was a really, really stressful time for the family. I was worrying how my mum was going to take it. It was then on me to deal with the funeral. There was this huge emotional stress, which I then figured out is actually a big factor in a lot of these inflammatory bowel diseases. So when that happened and my dad died 2 weeks before Christmas, the colitis came on big time. I was really struggling, and then after a colonoscopy, I was diagnosed in the hospital with severe ulcerative colitis. And then yet again, I was given a similar kind of prognosis. It was like, this is incurable, here's medication, take it for the rest of your life. Now at that time, I was thankful for the medication. I took the steroids, I took the anti-inflammatories. They do have their place when you're in that crisis situation, and they really did help. I'm not completely anti-medication, but I knew that I didn't want that to be my long term. I was still only in my mid-30s. I didn't want to be taking them for the rest of my life, and I still felt in my gut that I've got to find the real answers to the root causes of what's going on here. So I then continued down that path. And fortunately, a couple of years down the line, I found all the solutions, and I'm now 5 years medication free, and I'm well on top of the colitis. It's in remission, and I'm now doing everything I can with my own podcast and writing books, using my journalistic skills just to share some of this natural health information to help people in the same position as me to try and take back control of their gut health.
Yeah, so you originally diagnosed with IBS. Do you think that your ulcerative colitis was actually already there at that point, and it just happened to get worse, after your dad passed away?
That's a really good question. I think the beginnings were there, because what I discovered further down the line when I kept on digging to find the root causes of ulcerative colitis was that a big factor in what was causing my health problems was environmental toxicity. I had mercury poisoning in my body, and that had actually began way back when I was a teenager. The cause of my mercury poisoning was silver fillings I had in my teeth. I had 5 big ones, and I recall when they were actually put in. I was about 13 or 14 years old. Quite a few of them get put in at once. So they had been in my mouth, and when you drink something hot and you eat a hot meal, these release vapours, and those mercury vapours are then absorbed in the body. And now this had been going on by that point. When I was diagnosed with IBS, they had been in my mouth for around 14 years. And then by the time I had colitis, we were over 20 years. So yeah, I definitely think the ball had really been rolling, and it was just an accumulation of more of this toxicity, and then the stress in my life, all of that culminating into the colitis really developing further down the line. So yeah, I think you're right. I do think that the roots of it were there early on.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you think about it. Your immune system will, fight toxins. It will try and get rid of toxins. And if there's too much toxins, it can almost cause the autoimmunity. And then add to that the mental stress of your dad passing away. And obviously we know about the connection between the gut and the brain as well. And now your body's just gone into overload. And it's like, wow, what do I do now? One of the things that, you mentioned that the symptoms that you were having, the bleeding, I think you said weight loss. How did all that actually affect your day-to-day life?
Well, it was difficult in terms of my job, because my job was quite demanding, and that was putting a lot of stress on me as well. And then it actually got to the point, and I know people listening to this, we've got issues will be able to resonate. It got to the point where I began to fear food. I began to fear eating, because I was getting so many reactions to just about everything. Now at that point, you think it's the food. You think the food's causing this reaction. Maybe I should stay away from the tomatoes. Maybe I should stay away from the bread, and you blame the food, and then you really begin to worry about the fire it's going to cause within your belly and the headaches that are going to come flooding in afterwards. And really, what we should be looking to, what I discovered later, is really we should be looking within to what is really causing the reactions within your body to the food. So yeah, one of the biggest ones for me was just, I mean, it's massive when you're worrying about every single next meal. Like, we need food to survive. We need nutrients from our food. And I was being very clued up on health and fitness. Just like you, at one point, I was actually a personal trainer. I was big on health and fitness, and I did that for a couple of years when my health was at an okay level before ulcerative colitis. So I was well clued up on diet and nutrition, so I knew that if I'm not getting these nutrients from food, my health is going to take a downturn. So then there's this vicious circle where you're worrying about that as well. So the whole stress element, the fear of food, those were the biggest factors for me in my life.
Did it stop you doing, I mean, it sounds like, you're quite into health and fitness and possibly sport. I'm guessing it would have affected that as well.
It did. Don't get me wrong, I still continued doing it. The gym for me is a release, and it's a time to get away from the stresses of life, and it actually helps keep me mentally sane in this mental world we're living in. So I always continued with my gym work, and I actually do think that did help as well. And we do know that sweating in the gym actually helps get rid of some of these toxins as well. And there is some research as well that going to the gym and looking after your body in that way is actually good for the microbiome as well. So I always continued going to the gym, but I think I would say the biggest factor was it really affected me mentally. When you're always worrying about how your body's reacting to food, if you're worrying about how you look physically, losing all the weight, your complexion's grey when you're looking 20 years older than you really are, it does have a big effect on you mentally.
Yeah. So you mentioned about the mercury poisoning. Were there any other breakthroughs for you, on your road to reversing your gut conditions?
So what I would say, that there were 4 big key lessons that I learned on the gut health journey, and basically it was on that whole journey, which spanned about 8 years. It was almost like getting pieces of the puzzle, because I was trying to find the root causes myself. The doctor couldn't do it for me. I had to do all of this digging. When it was just the IBS side of things, I got 2 pieces of the puzzle. And that was one, the nutritional deficiencies. are a big cause in our health issues. When we're not getting the right vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, our cells are starving, and it obviously then leads to chronic illness and disease. So that I knew that was one piece of the puzzle, and I also realised back then that stress was massive as well. I really needed to do everything I could to manage stress levels, because that was having a direct effect on my gut, releasing cortisol, adrenaline, all of that kind of thing. So I had those two pieces of the puzzle. The environmental toxicity came next when I learned that through Dr. Marc McLean. I was listening to a podcast of his, and he was talking about how a lot of the patients he was coming across in his practice were dealing with heavy metal toxicity. He was just saying this is massive these days. That was the next piece of the puzzle for me. And then finally, emotional stress was a big one, which I learned. And now I first learned about this through a book called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. It's an amazing book, and it talks about how our childhood trauma directly affects our everyday life as adults. And that was completely new to me at the time. And that then sort of sent me down a rabbit hole as well, because I then discovered through a lot of inner work and therapy and all of this kind of stuff that my childhood experiences where my parents broke up, my mum and dad divorced when I was only 3, my father left, I got brought up by a single parent, my mum struggled on her own with me and my sister. All of that had a big impact, and that was that was also contributing to this underlying chronic level of stress within the body. I was digging into that a good bit deeper further down the line. I've done quite a lot of work, a lot of inner work in relation to releasing emotional blockages. And it's funny because a guest you've had on recently, Dr. Bradley Nelson, I've read his book, The Emotion Code. I've done emotion code work with a practitioner releasing these trapped emotions. I know you're quite clued up in all of this stuff as well, and I found that to be massive. I don't think the majority of people out there realise how big emotional stress, whether that's through childhood trauma, whether that's through a divorce, whether it's through losing a relative further down the line, these are big events in our lives that we sometimes struggle to process. These emotions can get trapped in the body, and then that can lead to physical health issues like the wide variety of gut health issues that people are experiencing just everywhere these days. It just seems like there's a gut health epidemic these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's quite interesting, when you start looking into the kind of emotional aspects and how they can affect the physical body, because they can be very, very pronounced. So that forms quite an important part of my work now, is helping people with those emotional blockages. And they can get trapped in the intestinal tract. So it's definitely something that people need to consider. It's not just we're not just a meat suit, right? We're a lot more than that. And if you start looking into the fact that we're an electromagnetic being, you start to realize that we're far more than just this meat suit.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned earlier that your doctors basically said to you, well, you're going to need to be on medication for the rest of your life. And basically that it's incurable. Where would you say you sit right now? Do you feel that you've, quote unquote, cured your ulcerative colitis? Where would you say you sit right now? When 35-year-old Amanda first scheduled to see me, she'd been suffering for 19 years from severe IBS, diarrhea and fecal incontinence, along with abdominal pain and bloating. Her condition had not only made life uncomfortable for Amanda, but very inconvenient, as she had to walk 2 hours to work every day along a route that had public toilets, and she'd never been on holiday as an adult because of her condition. The only advice that several doctors and specialists had given Amanda was to take Imodium, and when she first saw me, she was taking 5 Imodium a day and wasn't getting any better. To help Amanda, I ran tests to find out what foods were right for her metabolic type, to see which foods she was sensitive to, and to assess her gut microbiome. Tests showed that Amanda had several food sensitivities and a parasite infection. Over the coming weeks, I coached Amanda to eat right for her type and to replace the foods she was sensitive to, and a protocol to deal with her parasite infection. And after 3 months, Amanda was IBS free, and she also reported her skin was much improved and she had lost weight. And she booked a holiday for her and her husband to New York, as they'd never been on a proper honeymoon because of her IBS. And if you're suffering like Amanda was, and you want to get to the root cause of your problem, you can arrange a consultation with me at www.bodycheck.co.uk. And if we're a good fit, I could help you achieve the same kind of results as Amanda. Now, back to the podcast.
Yes, so here's the thing. This is quite the controversial topic, as you might know. When it comes to the terminology around these gut health conditions, I'm quite careful about how I choose my words. I personally believe that I've healed this condition. I feel that I've overcome it. But because colitis is quite such a serious condition, there's a lot of people going through the mill, and people who have maybe had it worse than me, they've had to have surgery and all of that. It can be quite difficult for them to hear people say that they think it can be overcome naturally, because they've obviously had really difficult times, and doctors are telling them otherwise. So who are they to listen to this guy who's not got medical qualifications? I totally get that. What I think is really important, though, is that we don't attach these labels to ourselves. I feel that if we take on this idea that no matter what the condition is, that it's incurable, that's going to become a huge block to your recovery. No matter what the condition is. If we take on, I am this, I am stuck with this is incurable, I think it's going to be almost impossible for you to really get better again. So if I became aware of that straight away, and I just put the incurable label to one side and just went into this with an open mind and says, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to dedicate my life to figuring out the root causes of what's going on here, because there's nothing more important than your health. So for me, I decided to have an open mind, go down that road and explore every single avenue I could to get well again. And I think that when you have that faith that you're going to get better and that there's a higher source looking after you, the answers do come. They do come. Now, 9 months down the line, a huge answer fell on my lap. And it's funny how it happened as well. I was going on holiday with my mum to Canada, and I was on my way to the airport to pick up my medication. So I was at that point getting this anti-inflammatory medication called mesalazine, which was doing the job. It was really good. It was keeping the ulcerative colitis in check, and I was doing pretty well on it. But when I got to the chemist that day en route to the airport, the pharmacist says, your prescription's not ready yet. You'll have to wait till this afternoon. So I had a choice, wait till the afternoon or miss my flight and my holiday to Canada. So I'm sure you can guess which option I took. So I had to go there without my medication. And as you do when you're on holiday, I was enjoying barbecues. I was having the odd beer with my cousin. I was going to Tim Hortons with him in the morning and getting coffees. I don't normally drink coffee. It's not good for my gut. All of this stuff eventually accumulated, and on day 10 of the holiday, I had a massive gut flare-up. The colitis was back with a vengeance. And I still had 4 or 5 days of the holiday left, and I was like, I cannot. I was on the toilet again, passing blood. I was in bed with cramps. It was really, really bad, and I was like, I cannot face another 4 or 5 days of this while I'm on holiday. I need to find some sort of natural solution while I'm here. So I went back to doing what I used to do, and that was going online, searching for natural health solutions to gut health conditions, to inflammation in the body. And I came across a guy called Wim Hof, who I'm sure you've probably heard of. He's became a bit of a legend in the alternative health space these days. Now, learning about him, the big thing that really stood out to me with the Wim Hof method is what it's known is that how it addresses inflammation. It reduces inflammation in the body dramatically. So straight away that just sang to my soul, because I knew that obviously I was dealing with a serious inflammatory condition. Now, for anyone listening to this who's not aware of Wim Hof, he's got this Wim Hof method, which is essentially 3 different elements. It's a breathwork practice, which is based in these ancient Indian pranayama-based breathwork techniques. It's cold exposure, which is either cold showers or going out in the water outside. And then there's also this mindset element. So I just dived straight into this. I was at my cousin's and I braved the cold showers maybe for 20 or 30 seconds at a time. And then this breathwork practice, which only takes around 10 minutes, it's recommended that you do this once per day. I was doing this morning, afternoon, in the evening. I just get stuck right into it. And within the space of like 4 or 5 days, I started noticing my symptoms were dissipating. And then when I got back home within 1 or 2 weeks, I just carried on with it and things just got better and better. My health was improving. The inflammation wasn't so pronounced in my stomach. I was not responding to foods like I used to. Things were just getting better day by day. And I was like, this is amazing. So obviously I decided to continue with the Wim Hof method, kept on doing it. And I decided, I'm going to continue with this. It makes total sense. If it's bringing these positive results, I'm just going to keep doing it alongside my medication. But then as things got better and better, I was feeling more energised. I wasn't reacting to foods as badly. I just decided, do you know what? I'm going to taper off my medication and see what happens here. And now I'm not recommending anyone else with a gut health condition does this. I'm not like, stick with your medication, do what your doctor says. But for me, there wasn't a risk in doing this, because I was like, if any of these symptoms come back, I'm just going to go back to the medication. Everything will be fine. That will be a safety net. But then 5 years down the line, I've continued doing the Wim Hof stuff, continued with my supplements, continued with all the different other health tools that I use, and I've been medication free ever since for over 5 years now.
Yeah, that's great. So I know you've written a book, and you mentioned you have a podcast on natural gut healing. Yeah. What's your mission behind those? Why do you do those?
Yeah, so I'm just really passionate about sharing natural health information that can help people on their path to recovery and taking control of their own gut health, simply because I always put myself in the shoes of these people, looking back to where I was back then. Because when I was diagnosed with IBS that first time, I knew nothing about it. And the doctor never even gave me one single bit of advice about my diet. He never even acknowledged diet. And we both know that diet's a massive part of our health. And as we are doing this interview right now, there's someone is being diagnosed with an inflammatory bowel disorder, and they're getting no support. They're getting no dietary advice. They just think that this is all I've got. I need to just take the medication and that's it. And that's not the case. We're in this big, wide world where there are so many alternative health experts like yourself that they can turn to, who have been through the mill. They have actually been in the shoes of that person, and they can give far better advice because they've had that life experience. And these people don't need to make the same mistakes that I made. It took me the best part of 10 years. There's a lot I discarded, but there's quite a lot of really helpful, holistic health advice and tools that I picked up on my journey. And I just feel really passionate about sharing it on the podcast, and then also interviewing other people who have done the same thing, maybe in a different way, because I don't claim to have all the answers. There are many different ways to heal the gut, and I love just bringing on other people that have done it, because I think that when people see that there are all these other different examples of how you can do it, it gives them confidence that they can do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually did read your free book, by the way, which I know it's a mini version of the full book.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I just have to say, it's so obvious that you're a journalist and you're in the media, because you just write so well. Like, it just reads really, really well. So, I definitely recommend we'll give out the details of your website at the end, but, anyone struggling with any kind of gut issue, I definitely recommend at least downloading your free book and reading through that because it's really, really well written. So, well done with that. That was really good.
Oh, cheers. I really appreciate that. And that, again, going back to the whole journalism thing, I specialise in communication, and maybe that's just been part of my journey, that I've just to use those professional skills and my own life experience to just share some of this stuff. And honestly, I've got the book on Amazon, More Than a Gut Feeling, and then I've got the free book on my website. But I would genuinely share this information with anyone for free, because I know how bad it can get when you're dealing with something like colitis. It's really, really worrying at times when you see that blood in the toilet and you have this bleak diagnosis that it's incurable. And that's one of the main reasons I put that free book, Gut Rescue, on my website, so that people can have a bit of hope that there's a lot they can do to help themselves.
Yeah, I do remember a few years back now that a footballer played for Manchester United, Darren Fletcher. Obviously, he's a Scot as well.
Yeah, I remember his story,
Yeah, so that was ulcerative colitis, wasn't it? Or was it Crohn's disease?
No, I'm pretty sure it was colitis. It was either colitis or diverticulitis, which is they're very similar.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. I know it wasn't.
Was it?
It was either ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease.
Okay.
Because I remember at the time thinking, he was out for such a long period of time, and I remember thinking, should I contact Manchester United and say there is a way around this? But I didn't in the end. But it pretty much curtailed his career, didn't it? Really, I mean, he kind of came back, but he didn't really.
And I think you could tell that he didn't look very healthy at times. You could tell that Darren Fletcher had lost a lot of weight, and he was a really good football player. I'm sure he captained Scotland at one point as well. And yeah, it's a shame because there's this information's out there, but that's an example of how the general public are just going on this mainstream medicine advice that you just have to take this medication. There's not much you can do about it, and that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean, it's very sad. We could go down the rabbit hole that our current medical system is really set up to generate profits for pharmaceutical companies. It's not there to help people get healthy, unfortunately, and people don't like to hear that. But sadly, that is the truth.
It's the truth, yeah.
And when you say to someone, "Yeah, you got to take medication for the rest of your life," well, now they've got a customer for life.
Mm.
And then, generally speaking, what tends to happen is you take that medication that causes side effects, and then they give you another drug for the side effects, and then that drug, or even the combination of those two drugs, causes more side effects. So you get given another drug, and now you become a dream for a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
But if you make that decision that that you're suggesting, actually you can take control of your own health, then no longer are you, let's put it this way, you're no longer a slave to the medications. Julie, a 47-year-old who works in computer sales, came to see me complaining of lifelong irritable bowel syndrome, which included severe abdominal pain and bloating, loose and very frequent stools, along with hot flushes, menstrual brain fog, and low energy, which affected her work performance. After taking a comprehensive history, plus running some labs, I discovered that Julie had a parasite infection, which may have been causing the loose stools, a methane-producing bacterial overgrowth that was almost certainly causing the abdominal bloating and pain, a leaky gut, low levels of digestive enzymes, as well as eating too many high oxalate foods on her vegetarian diet. So Julie reduced the high oxalate foods from her diet, plus she took a broad-spectrum antimicrobial supplement to help with the parasites and the bacteria in her gut, probiotics to increase her good bacteria and help repair her gut lining. She also took prebiotics to help feed the commensal bacteria, digestive enzymes to improve her digestion, and herbs to help clear the toxic lipopolysaccharides from her system produced by the overgrowth of gram-negative bacteria. At the end of the program, Julie reported that her health had never been better. In her own words, the improvement is staggering. The abdominal pain and bloating was gone. Her stools were back to normal. Her energy was up, she no longer had brain fog or hot flashes, and her immune system had improved as she no longer suffered from frequent bugs and colds. If you're suffering like Julie was and you want to get to the root cause of your problem, you can arrange a consultation with me at bodycheck.co.uk. That's BODYCHEK. And if we're a good fit, I could help you achieve the same kind of results as Julie. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing as well, going back to what I was saying earlier about the medication and some of the pushback you get from people who've had a tough time with their gut issues. They'll say, well, I really need this medication. It's almost life-saving in my case. And that's all well and good, and I totally agree with that. But when I was told I was given this medication, I was told it works in 80% of cases. So in my mind, I was like, well, what if it stops working further down the line? What about all the different side effects that I could get, which are not mentioned in that consultation? There's all of these other different factors that we don't take into account, and I didn't want to be at the mercy of that. So that's why I just feel that it's important that, yeah, the medication is good in a crisis situation, but we do have other options out there, and we can. And again, going back to that whole incurable thing in the terminology, what I quite like to say to people now is, I'm not claiming that there's a magic cure-all. I'm not claiming that there's a specific diet that's going to work for you, because diet's very bio-individual. We all react to foods differently, but you can certainly reverse your symptoms, and you can certainly put the colitis into remission naturally. That can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing, well, the other way I would look at it as well is that, let's say, you mentioned the mercury toxicity, you mentioned there was, emotional issues from, your parents splitting when you were young. Well, if you don't address those things, potentially not only could it have caused Crohn's, but it could have caused something else as well later on, right? So, it's a little bit like, if you bought your teenager a car to drive and they kept crashing it, and you kept taking it to the mechanic to, sort out the dents, well, surely it'd be better to teach the kid how to drive properly than to keep taking it to the mechanic every day, right? So, by dealing with the root cause of the problem, you're actually saving yourself in the long term. And I completely agree with you. When things are really dire for a short period of time, yeah, you may well need, in your situation, the anti-inflammatories. But long term, you've really got to look to deal with the root cause, which you've done.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really liked from your free book, by the way, was what you described as the 5 pillars for healing the gut. Could you explain your 5 pillars?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is all about mindset and getting yourself in the right frame of mind and not attaching those labels to yourself. Then there's oxygenation through the breath work, which I spoke about earlier, because if we oxygenate the cells, we can help bring healing. Then there's nutritional deficiencies. Then there's detoxing the body, which is very, very important. And then addressing stress, emotional stress. So those are those 5 pillars. And I delve into them in quite a bit of detail in that book. There's obviously only so much we can cover in a podcast episode, but that book does delve into them in a lot more detail.
It's really interesting because in my most recent book, which is called Eliminating Adult Acne for Good, pretty much cover the same 5 things.
Yeah, really.
Right, and it starts with mindset.
So important.
Yeah. It's. I mean, the other thing, the thing I try and get across to people is, if you're about to start on a journey, and it is a journey, it's not a quick fix. If you want to optimize your health, if you're currently in a position where you've got a health challenge, it's a journey. It's not I'm just going to click my fingers and everything's better again. You've got to get your mind right first, because when we go through these journeys, there's always a bump in the road. There's always something to knock you off course. And if your mind isn't in the right state of mind, it's easy to go, oh, well, I failed. Yeah, that's it. It's end of story. But if your mindset is in the right place, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, there's a bump in the road, but let's keep going,
Yeah.
And I also really like the fact that you gotta remove the label, right? I'm Mark. I have ulcerative colitis, right? I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. You got to remove that from your identity because, as we know, everything in the universe is a vibration, and so are your thoughts, right? Your body is a vibration. Most people think their bodies are actually physical, like, they're not, right? If you break down an atom, what's it made of? Energy, right? So removing that label from yourself is absolutely crucial right from the beginning. So, and I completely agree. That's what you're saying, and yourself. And I one of the things I use a lot with clients is affirmation statements.
Yeah, I use them myself too.
And I would get, again, people with gut issues, I get them to come up with an affirmation that sits well for them. And quite often there are similar words that people use. So when they talk about their tummy, they talk about it being flat and calm and cool, because often it's obviously, it's bloated, it's painful, it's hot. And just repeating that time and time again is creating that vibration. Remember, we are vibration. So what would you say is your key message to anyone who's recently been diagnosed with IBS or ulcerative colitis?
A key message I like to get out there is trust yourself. Trust yourself and have faith that when you commit to this path, that you're going to get better, you're going to find the answers, you will get solutions, even though it might be difficult right now. When you commit to that and you have that faith, the answers do come. Every time they come. And now, what way they'll come, when they'll come, I can't say that, but it may be listening to a podcast like this, you'll have an aha moment. That's a piece of the puzzle. That'll lead you down this next path. You'll find someone else. The answers are there. I just feel, and it might sound a bit woo-woo, but I do think that the universe has your back. If you have that faith, and I'm not saying I'm not a religious person. I very much do believe in God, and I'm a spiritual person. Whatever your beliefs are, I do think that we are looked after. And if we have that faith, then the answers will come. They definitely will come.
Yeah, so really the situation is keep looking.
Yeah.
If you haven't found the solution, don't give up. Just keep looking. And I see, I'm quite focused on the acne space at the moment because the book that came out a few months ago. And I see on social media so many people saying, well, I've got acne, that's it. It's genetic. I've got it for the rest of my life. And it's like, no, it's only you haven't found the right person to help you yet, or the right people to help you yet.
Yeah.
They go to their doctor, their dermatologist, they don't help them, sadly. And so they say, oh, well, no one can help me because, their God model, if you like, the doctor or the dermatologist says, well, I've done everything I can for you. That's it. But, with any condition, if you haven't found a solution yet, like you say, keep the faith and keep looking because the answers are out there. And I guess if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know that already anyway.
Yeah. And I listened to your story as well. I know you were on a very long journey with your skin issues. And the beauty of that, Lee, is I think we're now in a world where the healthcare model is slowly shifting in a positive direction. I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that the answers aren't in the mainstream medical system when it comes to chronic conditions. Obviously, we need them for acute situations, but we're now having this health space where all of these health coaches who have actually got the life experience are coming to the fore. People like you, people like myself, helping other people with gut health conditions. And so many more of them are emerging, and through word of mouth from you've been able to help people who have dealt with acne for since they were a teenager or whatever. Through word of mouth, they'll actually realise, you know what, there is a way. I can find a way. And you can provide the shortcut for them, because it can be a long road. What I imagine, was it like 18 years for you? Was that right?
Yeah, 18 years of, kind of hoping that my doctor was going to come up with a solution.
Yeah, and there'll be people thinking that as well now. They could save themselves a decade, maybe longer, just by working with someone like you who can save them all the mistakes, save them all the wasted money, just getting what works in a single program. And that's why I'm very positive about the world we're in just now, when people have all of these different options.
Yeah, I think, it's been well documented what's happened over the last 4 years, and I don't want to go into that at all. But I think what it's done for a lot of people is open their eyes to the fact that we don't, certainly in the UK, but it's pretty much the same across the Western world. We don't have a health system. We have a disease maintenance, profit-making system. So keep us as unhealthy as possible for as long as possible. So try not to kill us, but keep us as unhealthy as possible, because then that's when we're at the most profitable. So I think a lot of people have started to realize that, particularly with a particular product that was released without being tried first. And, I think the message over the last 4 years has been, you need to take control of your own health. Don't rely on some guy in a white coat to tell you how to be healthy, because you can't get health from a tablet or from a syringe or from a scalpel. The way that you get healthy is from your day-to-day choices and behaviours.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. In terms of the big upside to that horror show we went through, that definitely is that it woke a lot of people up to what's really going on, and then seeing the aftermath of what went on. We won't go down that rabbit hole because it's a big one. But yeah, that's the big upside to it, is that more people are saying, wait a minute, and I do need to take control of my own health.
Yeah, they say every cloud has a silver lining. So I think that's certainly one silver lining from the big cloud that we were under for those years.
Yeah.
So, Mark, what's next for you? Apart from going to take your son to nursery.
Yeah, he's waiting to go to nursery. I'll be taking him soon. So yeah, so my podcast is called For Gut's Sake. I've been running that for just over a year now, and again, it's just to help spread positive information about natural, holistic methods for people to get their gut health in control. Now, that had been focusing on IBS, colitis, and also Crohn's disease, which is very similar to colitis. Excuse me. But I'm actually taking things in a slightly different direction over the next month or so, where I'm going to be focusing specifically on ulcerative colitis. I just found that on my podcast over the past year or so, there are some amazing people out there who are far more clued up on IBS than me, and they're doing a great job, and that's their lane. I really think my lane is ulcerative colitis. That was the big bump in the road for me that I managed to overcome, and it's where I think I can offer most value for people. So the podcast is going to be rebranded. It's going to be called Mission Colitis Remission, and the new website is just being built right now. By the time this episode goes out, it should be live. So the website is colitisremission.co.uk, where people will be able to download that free ebook. There will be a blog, and all the episodes will be on there as well. So that's the big project I'm working on at the moment.
Awesome. So that's the website. What about any social media?
Good question. I'm taking a different direction with that as well, because I've been on Instagram, and you'll still find me on Instagram. I've also been on Twitter and TikTok. I gave all that a go. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of social media. I really do not like it. And I really want to focus on my blog, writing for other blogs, the podcast itself, and basically just optimizing my site through Google so that people find me that way. I just find social media is a bit of a waste of time. So I'm going to be focusing on the big skill I have is my writing skills. So my blog and writing for other blogs and putting the podcast out there is where I hope I find the right people. And you know what? I'm putting that in God's hands as well. I'm pretty sure the right people will find my website and find the podcast, the people that need the help.
Awesome. Great stuff. Mark, thank you so much for your time. I know, obviously, you're a busy man with a young boy.
Yeah.
And but we did well. We squeezed it in, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are going to get a lot from it as well.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the chat, Lee, and thanks for having me on. Keep up the amazing work.
Well, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure having you. So that's all from Mark and me for this week. But don't forget, you can join me at the same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.